Kia ora team, and welcome to this short video on how to do your final write-up of a practical experiment or investigation. So it's two main parts, and the first one is the conclusion. Now this is the part where you are going to analyze your results and start to unpack what those results were and why they showed what they did. If there are any patterns or an absence of a pattern, and how those patterns would have come about or why there weren't any. There's a good structure to do this, and we're going to unpack that as well today, and that's called SEAL, which you can see here, S/E+E/L. Now that will make a bit more sense in a second, but over to the S. So the S stands for state, and this is where you want to reiterate what you were doing in your experiment and what you thought would happen. So that's obviously the aim and hypothesis. You also want to put in whether or not the data you collected, the graph you drew, actually supported or provided evidence against your hypothesis. It's okay if it goes either way, because you will unpack and explain to the reader the significance of your results in the latter part of your SEAL conclusion. So the next two E's are the explain and the examples. So put those two together. Obviously here you want to explain your data and what you got using specific results, and that's the examples. So you've stated that your data supports or doesn't, and then you're explaining how it supports or it doesn't support your hypothesis. So you might be just, if your hypothesis was, the amount of fertilizer will increase the growth of, a plant height. And your hypothesis was the more fertilizer, the higher your plant will grow. Then you would then explain those results in terms of specifics. So no fertilizer grew this much fertilizer grew this much, and this much fertilizer grew this. This supports my hypothesis, or maybe even found too much fertilizer doesn't. So you can start talking about that there. And finally, your L is what we call the links, and we want to sort of think about that in terms of linking that to theories or maybe some research that you've done around your investigation back at the start in your introduction. This also is where you want to start unpacking the science behind your ideas and your data and your results. So why was the pattern that you're seeing there, or why was the pattern absent from what you thought would happen? So again, it is also extremely important at this part that you are linking and referencing anything you found online or in some journals or in some books that backs up what you saw to the authors of those documents. After that, once you've sort of understood your results, you need to then explain whether or not your investigation was credible enough to allow you to make the statements that you are implying into your conclusion. So, quick way to remember this one: SEAL for conclusion, VII for discussion. So, a structure you could use is to first talk about the validity of your investigation and the methods you used, and justify why your data was accurate and you did everything sort of by the book and did multiple experiments to ensure accuracy. This is also where you talk about your trial and how that your trial influenced how you changed your scientific method. The next is improvements. Now this is not stating what you did wrong. A lot of students get this wrong by invalidating their experiment by telling me everything that they've done wrong. This is actually what you could do if you say you had more time, or that sort of came apparent but was too late to implement in your experiment from the start. So this is anything that would either allow the results to be expanded upon in the future. Maybe you improved on an experiment you read about or heard about before when you were doing your research, before you started, or maybe it's something that, as I said, came about during the experiment so that you could guide whoever is reading your report to go that direction after they've read this report. And finally, what are the implications for this experiment in terms of did it add anything to the scientific world? Did it confirm? Did it challenge any ideas? Is there anything in this experiment that affects the local communities or the communities that you're writing it for? And yeah, this is where you sort of put in where you found those links from your conclusion, and sort of tying everything together in terms of improvements and where this research could go in the future. You may have heard in the news a while back about this student that did an investigation into the amount of vitamin C in Ribena, and it was found to be false advertising, and that had massive implications for that company and probably for the drinks industry anyway. So, even though you're doing an experiment in school that may have been done 100 times, you might just discover something that could change the scientific community quite massively. So there we have it, the conclusion: analysing your results, stating the science behind them, and your discussion where you're talking about how valid your experiment was, where you could go with that experiment if you were to do it again or in the future, and finally, what were the whole implications of doing this experiment or investigation on the scientific world. As always, come and see me in class if you want me to clarify anything or have questions. I'll see you there.